Can ADHD be cured? I think it can. Hey, I'm Paleo Cybernetic Edward, and today I just want to talk about how I treated my ADHD and my journey with ADHD, and then, some different ways that you can reduce your symptoms from ADHD or maybe even eliminate it altogether. I struggled early on with particularly schooling. I went to some very interesting schools, some very open alternative schools, but the moment I got to the public school education, it was like all the curiosity and enthusiasm I had for school just got sucked out of me completely. From that point on, I definitely struggled. I was kind of a dreamer, had difficulty focusing, and it was only until much later in my life that I realized that these things are symptoms of inattentive ADHD, which is a little harder to pinpoint in someone just because you don't have as many of those hyperactive qualities of ADHD that people typically think of when they think of ADHD. So I got diagnosed quite late in life, in my 30s, and I went on to medication. I found, after trying a few, that Concerta was the one that worked for me. I was on a generic brand from Canadian healthcare that was actually quite detrimental. It was giving me dizziness, but Concerta worked quite well. I was able to kind of clean up my life a bit in regards to my home and my job, put a lot more effort and enthusiasm into things, build my relationships where they had struggled just because I wasn't able to put as much time and focus into them. So overall, getting treatment was really powerfully transformative for me. But I started to have issues with the medication. Part of it was that taking the Concerta almost felt like it just put a lid on my emotions, but they were just suppressed. I wasn't able to process them, and I didn't have that full range of emotional expression that I normally had. It was really obvious with people I was close to, particularly as I found I would burn out on the medication after a week or two and have to cycle off of it for a week and then go back on it. I thought about ways that I could, keep my life together, treat my ADHD, and no longer need to use the medication. In the process of doing that research, I started looking into my diet, my health, my exercise, and many other things to get a handle of it. So the first one that was quite surprising was something called methylation. When I was in my 20s, I had had a DNA test from 23andMe, and in that I did get the raw DNA data. Doing some research, I found out that some people suffered from other types of, not mental disorders, but I guess symptoms similar to ADHD, but they were symptoms of poor methylation. Methylation is the process of how the brain creates neurotransmitters. There's a number of different ingredients that it uses to do that. And one of them are methyls. Folate supplementation is specifically for treating people who do not have enough of the ingredients for methylation. What I found is I took my raw data and I brought it over to a site called Genetic Genie. There I found I had low methylation or slow methylation. Essentially 40% of the population have abnormal methylation. And of that 40%, it's broken down so there's a few of them who have fast methylation. Essentially, they process the ingredients into neurotransmitters too fast. There are slow methylators who struggle to turn those ingredients into neurotransmitters. And then there's very slow methylators. The slow and very slow methylators will actually have most pharmaceutical drugs and recreational drugs will last in their system much longer than the normal person. They will experience overwhelm if they have too many methyl groups because they're not able to process them fast enough. This typically, for me, shows up as brain fog and anxiety. With a fast methylator, they kind of have the opposite problem, where pharmaceutical and recreational drugs will pass through their system much faster. They actually need more methyl groups to process into neurotransmitters. So that's where folate supplementation will actually really help, is if the person is a fast methylator. So I started changing my diet. In the process of doing so, found some really interesting things. One was I always thought B vitamins were a joke, that they never did anything. These B vitamins are used in the methylation process. So people would say they've got energy, good mood from B vitamins. I always thought like they do nothing for me. Well, I found out that's because of the absorption method. So I switched from methyl B12 or B vitamin, which is almost all B vitamins are methyls, and I switched to hydroxy B12 from AOR. It was night and day. Suddenly I was getting energy from B vitamins. I was really able to determine when days that I'd forgotten to take them or whatever, I would feel it and be like, oh gosh, I didn't take my B vitamins today. So it had a very strong impact on me. Another funny thing was I started being able to determine when food items were over-methylating me. And this is where I learned something pretty shocking. In Canada and in the US as well, there is a law that puts B vitamins in the flour. And this is to help support healthy umbilical cords for pregnant women. But it has the side effect of also causing 40% of the population to get brain fog. I mean, it does help the fast methylators, but the slow methylators are gonna have a hard time with enriched flour. I had already cut flour out of my diet before I learned about methylation, but it was even more shocking to me and made me sort of realize why things like pizza and pasta would make me feel so like slow and fuzzy. Another shocking one was now that I had really simplified my diet and removed a lot of items from it, I was able to determine like which things were causing my brain fog. I had quit coffee by that point. The medication had helped where I didn't need coffee to kind of feel like present. So I had completely quit coffee and quit drinking as well. These both really helped my ADHD symptoms. And I had already not been doing any recreational drugs for a decade or so. I would drink cacao every morning instead of coffee. And I made a crazy potion with like maca and all kinds of different things in there. And I started getting really intense brain fog. And I was like, this can't be coming from the cacao. So one ingredient at a time I removed until I found it was beetroot powder of all the things. I'd put that in there instead of sweetener, and the beetroot powder had given me very intense over-methylation. So methylation is one of those weird ones. If you suspect like you have overactive brain fog and you're not sure, maybe it's mold, maybe it's methylation, I definitely recommend taking a look. Have a look at your markers. This isn't something that like popular medical anyone really knows or talks about. Definitely an area where you have to kind of do your own research. And of course, none of this is medical advice. It's just me relating my own personal experiences. After methylation, the most important to me was exercise. I talked about quitting drinking, and one of the reasons I had quit was because I noticed my hangover was dragging on longer and longer. And I would feel a drag on my energy levels for about 3 days after drinking, which is pretty intense. So I had quit drinking. Actually, the ADHD medication helped me with that as well because they did not mix. So I didn't really want to do any of that. And I was able to get more energy, which to me, I think I've heard theories that ADHD is actually like a lack of energy issue. And so I do treat it from that angle. And the biggest thing that helped me was exercise. So if I went and exercised, and I'm talking about in particular about like weightlifting, because I found that most effective, I would get like a 3 to 4 day boost of energy and mood. If I continued with it, it would just stay. So exercise has been very important. I found like if I had exercised, I didn't need to take the medication. And it was interesting because when I was taking the medication, Concerta, it was like my brain was like, oh, you don't need to work out because the energy is taken care of. I found it actually harder to motivate myself to go to the gym when I was on Concerta because my mind would be so overactive and out of my body that I wasn't going to the gym. The next thing was really interesting was I found a study on Twitter that compared methylphenidate, which is Ritalin or Concerta. They found the effectiveness of methylphenidate was equal to the effectiveness of treatment via saffron. So they treated people with saffron extract. I'd never heard of this. I didn't know this was a thing. I went and got myself some saffron extract. And what I found was it was true. I now no longer needed to use medication. I could completely replace it with saffron supplementation. Saffron works with, there's a mood boost, there's better sleep, but also I find like a gentle focus. With Concerta, I always felt like I was forcing myself to do things, even if it was like easier, it still felt like the energy was forced and like compressed. My focus was compressed. But with Saffron, I don't have the emotional instability that comes from the medication, and I'm able to kind of have like a wider awareness and emotional range. So yeah, I'm very impressed with Saffron. I'm going to continue using it, and I recommend it to anyone who has like ADHD. Do your own research, of course, but I found it quite effective. All right. One of them that was interesting was getting over my fear of sugar. I think like sugar gets a real bad rap, right? I was quite amused when researching ADHD stuff to have like one of the premier traditional academic researchers for ADHD say that the most helpful thing if you're going into a big exam is to drink a big Gatorade because of the sugar. So the sugar actually really helps people with ADHD. Of course there is a sugar crash, but for example, Magnus Carlsen, the chess champion, he was drinking a giant thing of orange juice during his games in order to help with the games, because every thought uses energy. You need to start bringing that energy back by drinking something sugary. So he would do that. He found that he did have a sugar crash, however, so they switched to a carefully balanced chocolate milk, which of course I am drinking some of right here. Yeah, not seeing sugar as a bad thing. There's also a lot of people on Twitter are really into this Ray Peat diet, P-E-A-T, and he's got a lot of interesting theories about how energy dysregulation is caused by thyroid problems. So there's a lot of thyroid treatment that he goes into. So that's worth investigating as well. Next up is emotions. I found that when I switched over to Saffron, now I was able to give presence. My spirituality as well, the meditation I'd been doing had been developing, and I found that I had much more connection with my emotions and my heart, and I really just wanted to broaden that experience and allow those emotions to flow through. I started seeing this pattern of this like sine wave, this up and down cycle of my life, and the medication had sort of helped change the frequency of the waves, but in fact, because I had to cycle on and off, that pattern still held. So the best way that I found to handle this was to process my emotions. And it's still something that I'm actively working on every day, but I think that there's just some remarkable people out there talking about this. Like for example, the Art of Accomplishment is just a fantastic YouTube channel, and Knowledge with Newel, I believe it's called, but I'll put a link in there. He is also fantastic for talking about kind of breaking these cycles and connecting with oneself. I had a really interesting reevaluation of my life before coming to Asia. And I had been at a New Year's Eve party and talking with some friends. It was all AI researchers, developers, programmers, and fun people. Well, there, talking to some people, I think I had these clickers. So I had been on YouTube and saw someone who was training themselves to stay on focus by having a little clicker that counted up, and they would count every time they refocused on their task, and it helped them focus. So I had bought one, and I think I got 5 in a pack or something. So I was asking people, hey, do you have any focus problems? Try one of these things out. I remember being very surprised when I talked to one guy, and I was like, hey, yeah, do you have any focus problems? I know you're developing these apps and so forth. And he was like, no, I have no focus problems. And I'm like, really? How did you do that? So he said what he's found works best for him is having everything set up and ready to go in all these projects that he's interested in doing. So if he doesn't feel like working on one project, he simply slides over to another station where there's a laptop ready to go, or a 3D printer, or a notebook, whatever it might be. And he just starts working on those new tasks. And I realized, like, man, I really have to do my own thing. I have to strike out on my own, because that is what my self, my consciousness wants to do. I want to be self-directed. I want to be working on things that I am personally passionate about, not that I am told I need to be passionate about and have to fake it. That's what I decided to do. I changed my life. I turned everything upside down to pursue that. And I think it's really important. If I fail, I fail. I go back to the job world, whatever. To me, it was really important to pursue doing exactly what I want to do. And that's helped me manage my ADHD symptoms a lot. Surprise, surprise. Doing what you want to do, it's easier. You know, when you have ADHD, we always like talk about the hyperfocus. Oh, you played that video game for like 12 hours. What do you mean you can't focus? But it's because we're doing what we want to do that we're able to focus like that. So that's been really interesting. Eliminating open loops. I think with ADHD, there's a tendency to jump around to different things. And so there might be a lot of unread emails or clutter or just like different things going on, and eliminating open loops allows that energy to flow through much easier. The last thing that's greatly helped me in ADHD has been spirituality. I've found through meditation, through connection with source, with the world around me, with the people around me, I've become much calmer, and it's allowed me to trust the universe a lot more. And I think essentially my ADHD was coming from a place of anxiety and trust issues with the universe, right? Like, oh no, I have to panic and struggle with this project because if I don't, I lose my job. But then why does it make me procrastinate more? Because I'm resisting reality as it is. And when I was resisting reality and not just going with the flow and being okay with the way things are because there's a purpose to it, it was much harder. So relaxing and letting go and connecting to my inner center of awareness has helped me so much more treat what I used to call ADHD. Do I still actively work on symptoms that could be called ADHD? I would say yes. Focus is a very important thing for me. I'm always looking at different ways that I can continue to improve my productivity, my awareness, my emotional bandwidth. And at the same time, I feel like ADHD has stopped becoming something that has been holding me back and inhibiting me, and is now something where I'm really leaning into the strengths that come from being a person with lots of interests, with lots of enthusiasm and energy. And yeah, it's been a wonderful journey to discover this about myself while treating myself and healing those parts of myself that needed just a little bit more attention and awareness. So if you stuck all the way to the end, thank you so much. I hope this brings you value, and I'd love to hear from you. If you do try some of these things, if you have tried some of these things, let me know. If there's things that you struggle with, you know, I hope that this is helpful and that you find something out of it that, improves your life even in a little ways. Thank you, and I'll see you at the next one.